What the fuck?
No. No way. Not today.
You believe in Jesus?
Chuck Norris and Marvin, America's new heroes, the Delta Force.
Hello and welcome to the B-Movie Rollout Season 3. Yes, I know the board game reviews ran on a little long, so my break between seasons of this show ended up being worse than, well, what AMC normally does. And I am sorry about that, but the good news is I'm back with a new season of the B-Movie Rollout. In fact, this season will be quite different from my previous two, as I plan to break away from the one movie review per episode formula every so often. Later in the season, we'll take a look at a film character, a film producer, a television series, and even a 1930s serial. Don't worry, most of the season will be straight movie reviews, and like my previous seasons, I'm going to review a film trilogy. In fact, we're starting this season off with that trilogy. The Delta Force trilogy, starring our old friend, Chuck Norris. I'm sure some of you are familiar with the original Delta Force, and most of you probably aren't surprised there was a second one a few years later. But I bet almost none of you have heard of the third one. And I don't blame you. Chuck isn't even in it. But Mike is, as in Mike Norris, Chuck's son. Oh man, this is going to be hilarious. But before we get to that branch of the Norris family tree, we're going to take a look at the original, because there's plenty to talk about here. So without further ado, here's the Delta Force. Roll it. The film opens up with a retelling of a very real mission carried out by the actual Delta Force. This is supposed to be Operation Eagle Claw, an aborted attempt to rescue American hostages that were being held in Tehran. This scene, though exciting, exists for two reasons. First, to establish Chuck Norris as the hero.
When I raise up the jeep, move your leg! Ready? Move it!
Not as bad as Dolph Lundgren in Red Scorpion. But one, I don't think so. And two, the Jeep doesn't even move. How does he get his leg out? The second reason this scene exists is, well, politics.
Why in the hell wouldn't they listen, Nick? We told them it's too dangerous to launch this operation at night.
They thought their plan was better.
I spent 5 years in Vietnam watching them doing the planning, and us the dying. Well, I'm resigning when I get back.
Yeah, Republican politics. In fact, this movie has quite a bit of political baggage, but we'll get to that later.
I'm a huge Fox News guy.
The next scenes take place at an airport, cutting back between some suspicious-looking Arabic men and some perfectly innocent families. Can you guess what's coming next?
This is a hijack! Let's go!
Yeah, this is a movie where Middle Eastern terrorists hijack a plane full of families, Navy SEALs, a priest, nuns, a pregnant lady, and some elderly Jews who are also Holocaust survivors. Stacking the deck a little bit, aren't you? And are the Middle Eastern terrorists played by men of that ethnic group? Of course not. They're played by Jewish actors. Perhaps not as offensive as someone wearing blackface, but I can't help feeling uncomfortable with that casting decision. I'd say we're pretty close to the level of Rob Schneider offensiveness.
Okay, sorry. Can I write that down?
Alright, maybe not that bad. Now, despite what I just said, this hijacking is another retelling of an actual event. Time for a history lesson.
Delta Force deals with a rescue operation of hostages in Beirut. Similar to a situation that happened in America, to American hostages here a while back.
TWA Flight 847 was hijacked by Islamic terrorists in June of 1985. The hostages were treated poorly, but were eventually released after some of the terrorists' demands were met. Believe it or not, there are a number of scenes in this movie that are based on events that actually happened during the hostage crisis of Flight 847. 2 terrorists take over the plane, but 1 gets arrested? That happened. Flight gets directed to Beirut, where a dozen more terrorists get on the plane? That happened. Terrorists torture and kill an American Navy diver and then just throw him on the tarmac? Yeah, that happened. Pilot talks to the press while a terrorist holds a gun to his head? That happened. This scene?
Pick out the passport with Jewish names.
No! I won't do it!
No way. Holy shit, that happened. In fact, the real-life person this character was based on was a legitimate heroine who is way more interesting than what the movie makes her character. So a good chunk of this movie is a faithful retelling of the events that happened during the hostage crisis of TWA Flight 847. Injected with a ton of pro-Israeli propaganda.
You're Jewish, huh? No, I'm Chinese. Of course.
They don't like Jews, huh, Mama?
We survived once. We can do it again.
Did not call you.
You call for all the Jews. I'm Jewish, just like Jesus Christ. You take one of us, you gotta take us all.
It's the war! It's the war all over again, the concentration camps! Why don't you do something? There's only 2 of them!
This movie brings a whole new meaning to the term heavy-handed. I will point out that although the film's villains are portrayed to be absolutely evil, they are given little scenes here and there that show some humanity and some depth.
You feel good?
Fine,
yes?
Thank you for remembering.
Okay, everything? Yeah?
Thank you.
Good.
Ingrid, you're a brave woman.
How old are you, Helen?
6.
You know, Helen, I had a daughter exactly your age. Her name was Salimi. You understand, Helen? Good.
They didn't have to do that, and I'm surprised I'm giving credit to the Cannon Group here, but that was a good decision. Even slightly sympathetic villains make for a better movie. So that's the first part of this movie. Now, as far as the second half... The rest of this movie is pure Cannon Group Chuck Norris action schlock. The actual Delta Force did not rescue any hostages, so the second half of this movie is pure revenge fantasy. Did you like Inglourious Bastards? Kind of the same idea going on here.
We took the dramatic license and we changed the end of the, call it the hijack event, using the Delta Force.
It begins with Colonel Nick Alexander, played by the always awesome Lee Marvin in his final role, being ordered by a general, played by Robert Vaughn, to prepare a rescue mission. They get Norris's character, Major Scott McCoy, to stop pouting and come out of retirement for this mission. The terrorists separate the Jewish men and Navy divers away from the rest of the hostages when they land in Beirut for fuel. Reinforcements load onto the plane and it returns to the air, so the Delta Force has 2 groups to rescue, although the terrorists release the women and children in Algiers. McCoy then meets with an Israeli spy in Beirut, who tells him where the hostages are, but they are spotted and their spy is killed. What follows is actually a pretty exciting car chase. Van chase. After they escape, they rendezvous with the rest of the Delta Force team, and their caravan drives through town to start the rescue. Seriously, no one sees this dune buggy parade?
One day.
What's with the dramatic finger point? Who does he think he is, Bill O'Reilly?
Caution. You are about to enter the no-spin zone. The fact, it begins right now.
Caution! You're about to enter the no-spin zone.
Alright, enough fucking around. Come on, Chuck, get you some!
Sleep tight, sucker.
Yeah! Now we got a movie.
American, I want to negotiate. Do you hear me, American?
Loud and clear.
Oh, yeah! Kicking ass! Yeah! You know, actually, he looked kind of silly there. Ha! Take that, Locke! Anyway, they rescue the large group of hostages, and McCoy goes after the smaller group. Yeah, Norris on a dirt bike takes out the whole company and rescues the other hostages. He then goes to settle the score with the lead terrorist. Religious fanatic versus, religious fanatic.
We're in a cultural war. We're in a religious, spiritual war right now. So it's really important right now that we as Christians join together, rise up, and deal with this dark force that's trying to eliminate our God from our society.
Which will also, in turn, help us fight the terrorists.
McCoy lays the beat down on this guy. And then, just for good measure, Lee Marvin and the Delta Force free the plane and its crew, and load the hostages onto it so they can escape. But not before the diva, Chuck Norris, can have his big dramatic return. Seriously, look at that guy. They get out, but McCoy's sidekick doesn't make it. Meanwhile, the others sing America the Beautiful. Really? Where's Mitt Romney and Meatloaf when you need them?
America, America.
God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good brotherhood. Well, from sea, welcome thee, new shining sea, yeah!
And so ends the Delta Force, and sadly Lee Marvin's film career, as he passed away shortly after. This movie is Chuck Norris at his 80s apex. He wears a beard, mullet, and aviators. He shoots from the hip and does motorcycle stunts. And it's a Canon film produced by Golan-Globus. It's got it all. Some people like Norris as the martial arts master. Some people like him as Walker, Texas Ranger. And some kids like him as an internet meme. Well, some people are wrong. This is when Chuck Norris was at his most fun. This movie is pure escapism and revenge fantasy, which is probably why it's permeated with blatant propaganda. If you can get past that and you like 80s action, then this is for you. It has good action, the characters are decent, and the first half is based on actual events. But more importantly, it's got good action. And the theme music is excellent. Alan Silvestri's score is one of the best, and perhaps the most underrated action theme of the 1980s. I actually like this movie, but I bet you're wondering if Delta Force 2 is just as good. Nope. See you next time.
Golan and Golan-Globus. These two filmmakers created an American company called Canon, and they released, in a period of 20 years, at least 30 films which vilify all things Arab, particularly Palestinians. One of the most popular and most racist is the Delta Force.
Beautiful legs.
Ah, come on, Nick. You can't see him from over there.
Well, I got a good imagination. I